In this video I will be covering the AU Revenge the Unseen ending, which is an alternative route of the fan-made Undertale AU Disbelief. For the newer people in the Undertale community, let me at first explain what exactly the Disbelief AU is. Disbelief AU is an AU where Sans saves pə-PY-rəs in Snowden by jumping in front of the slash that was meant for pə-PY-rəs, and therefore Sans dies in Snowden instead of pə-PY-rəs. pə-PY-rəs is extremely distraught by this, and at the end of the game faces you in the judgment hole, where he fights against you in 4 different phases, before either convincing you to spare him and even reset the entire timeline, or failing to make you change and getting killed, while tragically still believing in you that you can still change. I will cover this AU another time, but today we are talking about Disbelief the Unseen ending. So what exactly is the story of Disbelief Revenge the Unseen ending? Well, it all begins with the fact that it is not an animation, a comic dub, or any in-betweens. In fact, it is a fan game, which is completely finished and can be played on GameJolt. The link to this game is down in the description if you are interested in playing this game, but I will warn you, it is extremely hard. But we are not here to talk about difficulty, we are here about the lore. So what exactly is the lore? The story begins with the prologue, where 3 of the most brilliant scientists are talking to each other, this being the mystery man Gaster, Sans, and Alphys. Sans and Alphys tries to convince Gaster to not continue with his experiment, since the experiment that they are experimenting with is rather unstable and has already erased a person from existence. The only people that can remember this person are the 3 in the room. Kind of reminds me of the white whale in ReZero, but let's continue on with the story. Gaster doesn't care. They spent years working on this experiment and he wants to see results, even if it means that he needs to be the lab rat. But it turns out that this was once again another failure, since Gaster from the future comments on this exact moment and notes that he regrets everything. He regrets that he didn't spend as much time with his sons, this being Sans and pə-PY-rəs, and he regrets the fact that thanks to his experiments that his own son pə-PY-rəs can't even remember him. He looks back at his own past, where he remembers that his father and mother had not a good relationship between them, and that they were rather absent and always arguing between each other, which resulted into them not having spent as much time with their son as a child would need. And Gaster seemingly made the same mistake. Instead of arguing with his wife or significant other, he spent his time researching and spending time in a lab without having spent time with his sons. He regrets all of this, so he tries in this universe to make amends. How exactly he does it? Well, this is the story of how exactly he will do it. So grab some popcorn and sit down as I will tell you the story of Gaster's redemption in Disbelief the Unseen ending. The story begins with pə-PY-rəs meeting the genocidal human in Snowden by trying to stop them by sparing them, but the human strikes pə-PY-rəs down. Well, that is usually the ending of what happens to the normal Undertale pə-PY-rəs, but in this timeline or alternative universe, Sans has a feeling of deja vu, as he had already experienced that and knows what exactly will happen to pə-PY-rəs. So he jumps in front of the slash, or in this case the punches of the human, and takes the hit. pə-PY-rəs is distraught and completely confused of what exactly has happened, but the human continues going forward, while Sans uses his last breath, get it, to inform pə-PY-rəs that he shouldn't face the human once again. He shouldn't try to fight him, he shouldn't try to change his ways, he should just stay away from the human. These were Sans' last words. But Gaster, who is in the void, was intrigued by this and tried to contact pə-PY-rəs by entering pə-PY-rəs' mind space or white space, but then again the white white space didn't exist back then in the days, so mind space or mind palace would be more fitting. Anyways, as Papyrus and Gaster enters Papyrus' own mind, this begins the first arc and a jump and run segment where Gaster informs Papyrus that he must kill the part of him that hinders him from reaching his full potential. To reach this part, Papyrus must jump around his own mind and kill these grotesque-looking creatures that try to stop him and try to hurt him in his own mind. Papyrus eventually finds the reason of why he can't reach his own potential, this being a small flower in his mind which represents his pity. Gaster encouraged Papyrus to destroy this part of him that feels empathy and pity towards his enemies. After Papyrus kills this personification of his kindness and pity, the second phase starts, and we once again control Frisk once again, who just entered the Judgment Hole but can't leave anymore since the entrance to the Judgment Hole is blocked with bones, as well as the box with the many items. And worst of all, they are not able to save anymore. Something is really wrong. It is even implied that all of this is thanks to Papyrus, since the dialogue for not being able to save is written in orange. So the player has no other choice but to continue going forward into the Judgment Hole, where Papyrus confronts the human. And Papyrus is here completely and utterly savage, who speaks in upper tone letters and speaks like a deranged man, who calls the human not as the usually human, but as the Mr. Spaghetti Friendship Brother Hater, while continue laughing and laughing with his famous nyeh. Even so, Papyrus is still ready to be your final boss, since he is motivated to revenge every single person that you killed in the underground. He is ready to avenge every single one of the monsters you have killed. And since you are such a bad person who can't be kind or considerate, he's ready to teach you, but not in a disbelief Papyrus way, but in a 90-30 or the 90-20 teacher way, with a rod, or in this case with a huge ass bone, to smash your hand in and smash your head in, while also using bombs and blue magic. Papyrus is now extremely strong. His attack stats is around 45 and his defense is around 1200. His weapon is really strong and seems impossible to break, which can be seen right at the first moment the player tries to attack Papyrus, since he not only blocks your attack, but slashes your knife out of your hand, making all your attacks now extremely weak, since you now can only use your hands to attack Papyrus. Papyrus is extremely euphoric over the fact that you have no knife in your hand, and proudly announces that it is now your time to die. But we are no quitter. Well, in this case, the player is no quitter, or in this case, Frisk is no quitter, and he throws hands with Papyrus while dealing around 32 damage. Papyrus looks at this damage and scoffs at it, claiming that it was easy to dodge, but he didn't have to. By the next attacks, he claims that he has newfound techniques that he will be using against you, this being a Gaster-like soul manipulation, which turns the human soul into a vessel that moves like it is in space. This means that the soul can either move at the top of the battle box or at the bottom of the battle box. It has to be noted that some of Papyrus' dialogues, especially those who are full of rage and willingness to hurt the human, have behind the normal letters, the Papyrus letters, wingding signs, meaning Papyrus is influenced by wingding's influence. This can be seen when the human has inflicted much damage to Papyrus, where he suddenly breaks free from wingding's influence and breaks down and states that he still believes in us and wants us to stop all this mindless killing and stop us from this genocide, since he believes that there can be some kind of family if the human would just stop this mindless killing. But before he can say he still believes in you, he suddenly makes a 180 and states that he is tired of all this bullshit, and then begins the third phase, where pə-PY-rəs stands in front of 7 human soul containers and is completely distorted thanks to Gaster. This version of pə-PY-rəs, who seemingly is distorted thanks to Gaster, informs the human that it's all their fault, that the human chose this path, and now they must face the consequences. The fight starts, and pə-PY-rəs showcases the human that he has all the 6 remaining souls that Asgore has gathered. And we fight a version of pə-PY-rəs who seemingly fused together with Gaster, and this fight is extremely hard to even beat. Even when you dodge all these attacks that are outside the battle box and survive to a certain amount of time, Gaster states fuck the rules and gives us a certain amount of time to beat him. If we beat him, the game just ends. If that means we finally beat Gaster and pə-PY-rəs and are now free of him is unclear, but then again the game wasn't really finished, so maybe the developer didn't know what exactly to do afterward, or it was just an artistic choice to showcase that Gaster maybe did become a god in this universe, meaning after the player killed this god of the new underground, the entire world, no, the entire game crashed down. It has to be noted that there exists an unofficial 4th phase, which can be seen as the act between Act 2 and Act 3, where pə-PY-rəs appears to hold a spear that makes him extremely powerful. His attacks are the hardest out of all the attacks from all the prior phases, and he has a high amount of defense. But thankfully we can't die in this phase, since apparently it wasn't properly programmed